of the most significant human efforts is aspiration to morality. Our inner stability and even existence is regulated by it. It is the morality of our deeds that adds beauty and dignity to our life. Albert Einstein. Time is everlasting, but life is a blink of an eye. It passes and becomes history. We leave behind our deeds and works, our evil and goodness. An old Eastern truth says, everything in life is afraid of time. Time, this mighty power that ruins civilizations, cultures, and nations, has not destroyed the evidence of an ancient nation's existence, these cuneiform records. Different human histories and fates are told in these age-old stones. Historical Armenia, Western Armenia, a territory of present Turkey. A biblical land where the 4 rivers that would spring from the Lord's paradise and the flowery field of Butakan have not been dried up yet. Lake Van. It was called Salt Lake in Assyrian inscriptions. The oldest god in the Armenian pantheon, Areg, every night with his resplendent rays rested in the lake of Van. His gorgeous bed was placed on the bottom. The water maids, with their tender songs, sweetened the tired luminary's sleep. City of Van, Tushpa, Vantosp, City of Semiramis. There was a city, I will say Eden, you may say paradise, with thousands of inhabitants who loved their homeland, soil and water, monasteries and monuments. Van is not far from the lake. The ancient city expands as a fabulous green-haired beauty, as an unreal fable, over which a huge sun glitters, rolls over on itself, then gets furious and pours out its ardent energy and solar passion. The world lives, and Van continues. It's in the cuneiforms, the speechless symbols of the oldest Urartian fortress of Van, we find information about the ancient neighboring country, Assyria. This land and this lake enshrine a number of tales and legends that, having been transferred from older generations, have reached our time. These legends are full of knighthood and heroism, where goodness always triumphs over evil. Alas, only in legends. In legends, we meet two neighboring people that have shared the same fate. This rock takes its name from Semiramis. It's preserved in the wrinkles of nations' memory. According to legend, the Assyrian queen Semiramis, fleeing from the soldiers who were chasing her, reached Lake Van, where she threw her magic necklace into the waters of the lake and turned herself into a rock. Moses Korenatzi, the father of Armenian history, mentioned that a great number of Assyrian immigrants lived in the territories of Vaspukran and Koraik, and that the Armenian prince Smbat Bagratuni's wife was one of them. A considerable part of early medieval Syria, or Asoraic as it is known in the Armenian language, now is in the territory of present-day Turkey. In the Middle Ages, Assyrians were also known as Syrians, Arameans. Christianity in Syria in the 1st century was widely developed. Syrian preachers spread the Christian faith throughout the world. The medieval spiritual educational centers of Syria, like Edessa, Nisibin, and Antioch, were in this region. Beginning in early medieval times, the heads and prominent representatives of the Syriac Church promoted Christian ritual life, Christian mentality, and the 4th century ascetic movement. Various monasteries and hermitages prospered in Syria during this time. Over the early Middle Ages, The Syrians and their culture greatly contributed to the world history.
Historical Syria was one of the most significant centers of Christianity. The reason for it was not Syria's nearness to Jerusalem, but the two important and celebrated centers, Antioch and Edessa, that Syria had created over time. They played an enormous role in Christian belief, liturgy and mentality, particularly in the first centuries of Christianity. The Syrian church backgrounds date back to Jesus Christ. According to an Assyrian legend, the king of Edessa, Abgar, sent a special delegation to Christ, asking him to come on his own or send one of his disciples to cure him from a disease. The relations between the Assyrian and Armenian churches have had historical, ritual and cultural reasons. Gregory the Illuminator, who was the first Christian patriarch of Armenia, had close relations among the prominent leaders and preachers of the Assyrian church. The patriarch Saint Jacob of Nisibin was one of them. His educational and preaching activities and works were so widely accepted in Armenia that he was considered an Armenian saint. Jacob of Nisibin was both a Syrian and Armenian saint. His decent, wonderful personality, his life mixed with our lives and his presence was so precious for Armenians that he in fact was accepted as an Armenian saint. That is how the world Christian people felt at that time, when there were no Christian and cultural divisions. Devotion to the same church, belief in the same Lord and carrying out the same mission stressed their unification rather than differences.
A theological controversy arose between the 4 to 6 centuries in the East. It was of political and social character, and gradually brought about the Nestorian movement. It also led to another stronger movement, Monophysitism, as a disproof of Nestorianism. Later, the churches and the predominantly Syrian descendants of the two movements were named after their religious leaders, Nestorians and Jacobites, respectively. Today, the Nestorian Church is known as the Holy Apostolic Catholic Assyrian Church of the East. The Jacobites are called Syrian Orthodox Church of Antioch. Historical Turabdin. The geographic borders of the historical Turabdin region were originally much larger than today. Western part expands to Mardin and the eastern part of the borders of Jaziro or Jazida. The names of different regions here are mainly of Assyrian origins. Many of them are still used today. The famous Assyrian historical, cultural, and spiritual centers are in this region. In ancient time, these monasteries and abbeys, situated away from populated regions, gathered huge crowds of pilgrims. Avoiding the world's chaos and disorder, the hermit sought refuge here and devoted himself to the Lord's service. Those monasteries are named after the saints who martyred themselves for the cross and their beliefs. Mor Gabriel Monastery. This magnificent 4th century shrine has the honor of being called one of the oldest and most famous functioning spiritual centers in the world, where Christian culture flourished for over 16 centuries since its foundation. It was also an important center of asceticism, writing, and literature of the Syriac Orthodox Church. It greatly contributed to the maintenance of the Assyrian language, ecclesiastical traditions, and liturgy. Many valuable manuscripts were written here. Mor Gabriel Monastery is the seat of the Metropolitan of the Turabdin of the Syriac Orthodox Church. Midyat. The city of Midyat in Turabdin region is often identified with the ancient Matyat, cited in the Assyrian cuneiform writings. It is in the province of Mardin of the Diyarbakir Vilayet, across the right bank of the Tigris River stream. The population of Midyat was mainly Christian, as proved by a series of Christian churches proudly erected in Midyat. According to a Syrian Catholic priest who visited Midyat in 1913, the population of the city of that time was 6,000 to 7,000, while Tomilov, a Russian colonel, estimated it at 10,000. The majority of them were Syrian Orthodox. There were also 80 Protestants, 30 Syrian Catholics, and some Chaldeans. The road leads us to the miraculous country of our ancestors, the country of our dreams. The city of Mardin lies on a steep hillside in the Mardin Mountains, where the Eastern and Western cultures are harmoniously intermingled. Built on the mountain precipice, Mardin is rich in squares, bathhouses, inns, churches, and mosques. At the 20th century, the city had nearly 14,000 Assyrians and 8,000 Armenians. The rest of the population consisted of Arabs, Turks, and Kurds. We felt unspeakable joy each time we found the cross-bearing domes of the old Syriac churches and monasteries nestled between the grand houses and modern buildings. During the time the Assyrian families lived in this quarter, they came to this church and attended this parish school, preserving their language and beliefs. It seems as if nothing has changed here. Standing churches remain and services are carried out by the local clergymen, though their flock has been diminished. There's a lack of Assyrian breath in this city. A bit far from Mardin is the monastery of Dir Azafran. Another early medieval masterpiece.